We're going to get into little X's and O's here. Like I said, I steal Cody stats on almost a daily basis.
It's not stealing. It's borrowing, using. As long as you give credit, it's not plagiarism.
Yeah, well, I still steal them. I mean, okay. I know Cody's going to have a juicy stat. I'm going to go to it. And the best part is, like, I'll be in your office and we'll be doing the podcast and I'll start to talk. And I'm like, I wonder what Clyde's usage rate is this year. And you're like, hold on. And then you'll have it.
Ready to go. So the way that I'm not a football guy like you. I stopped playing in middle school, so I'm not going to be like very strong on the X's and O's other than what I've read, and I try to study as much as I can. But the way that I watch a game when I go back and rewatch it is I have the game up and I watch it and I'm like, oh, that was interesting. Like I noticed that was like a cover 3. Oh, let me go look up the stats for Joe's throws against cover 3. Like that's just kind of how I watch. So I'm very statistically inclined because it's my best way of understanding the game. And fortunately, we have some tools that we can use to get some of those cool numbers. So you're welcome to have any numbers you want as long as I can steal your football analysis.
That is very fair. And when I start talking football and I want to find out where I think LSU has an advantage, it is the middle of the football field against Clemson's defense. And I realize that you're going to throw, not you per se, but people are going to throw Isaiah Simmons' name out there as far as, man, what are you talking about? He's a middle linebacker. He can cover anybody. I understand that. But when he's not, and he'll line up other places a ton. I mean, I saw the breakdown of where exactly he lines up. It's safety. It's in the box as a stack backer. It's on the line of scrimmage. He's been a corner, I think, 14 plays this season. So he'll line up at different places almost on every snap. And when you look at who they have in the middle of their field as far as safeties and middle linebackers, they all kind of have tight hips. They struggle when guys get their hips moving a little bit.
Yeah.
And say Clyde Edwards-Helaire on an angle route where he's made a lot of hay this year. He's run that route maybe more than any he's ran. Thaddeus Moss, and I'm not talking about reinventing the wheel here. I'm talking about just a check down over the ball or Thaddeus Moss on an intermediate dig route right over the middle of the football field. I feel like those are mismatches for LSU because those backers and those safeties aren't great in coverage when you make them move a little bit. And Thaddeus and Clyde are about as good a tight end running back route runners as you're going to find in the country.
So they don't play really a third corner. They play 2 corners and then 3 safeties basically. And Simmons has been very good this year. But Simmons and then I think 24, maybe his name's Nolan Turner. I can't remember his name exactly off the top of my head. I may be right in my recollection. Those 2 guys are exploitable in coverage. Their numbers aren't terrible. I think Simmons' like NFL passer rating against is in like the high 80s, which is not terrible for a guy that plays that position. And then the other kid, Turner, I think, his is in like the 110s, 120. So that's the 2 guys that I circle. I know Simmons is really versatile, but in the passing game, I kind of circle those guys and say, okay, let's see what we can get there. That said, I still like Jamar Chase and Terrace Marshall in one-on-ones with corners on the outside. Now, don't get me wrong, Clemson's corners have been fantastic this year. If you look at their advanced stats, they're as good as any corner pair in the country. I still like LSU's guys in those situations, though, because I just trust Jamar Chase and Terrace Marshall. But I really like whatever Clemson decides to do with the trio of Justin Jefferson, Thad Moss, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And you kind of see which pieces they put on which guy, and then there's going to be 1 or 2 mismatches there that LSU can go to on offense. And Joe is the best at it in the country, maybe the best we've ever seen, at finding that mismatch and attacking it. So I don't think he'll have any trouble with that. He'll still go to Jamar. Like, he'll still say, okay, you want to guard Jamar one-on-one on the edge? Let's go to him. But you do have those other options.
I think that the semifinal game is going to make the Clemson defensive staff just look at what they saw and say, you know what? A lot of teams are defending Jamar Chase with multiple guys playing bracket coverage. We can't do that.
Yeah.
Number 2 is a problem.
Yeah.
And he's a problem when you pay attention to him. And if you leave him alone like Oklahoma did, he's going to have 14 catches, over 200 yards, 4 touchdowns. And a lot of people point to the Mississippi State game plan as far as, well, you only scored 30-something points, and in the red zone you had some trouble. Let's not forget Terrace Marshall wasn't in that contest. Correct. And Terrace Marshall, before he goes out in Vanderbilt, was tied for the lead, I believe, as far as receiving touchdowns in the country. I think they both had 6 there. And Joe Burrow trusts Terrace Marshall maybe more than anybody in the red area. That's when he looks for him.
In the red zone.
That's the difference maker. If you want to play bracket coverage on 2 guys, which from my perspective, it's not good football, but if you want to, LSU has a 3rd guy that will make you pay, and that's the difference from when Terrace Marshall was out to now.
No doubt. And I don't think Clemson will do that. I don't think they'll bracket anybody. I think they'll say, you know what, we trust our two guys one-on-one on the edge, and we're going to have a deep safety. I think they're going to play like LSU plays. I think they're going to play one deep safety. I think they're going to go either man or cover 3 across the board and try to play as straight up as possible. The flip side of the ball is interesting to me when I look at LSU's defense versus Clemson's offense. And to me, the difference in the game is Trevor Lawrence can be superhuman at times, but he can be human at times.
Yeah.
And Joe Burrow this season, we haven't seen him be human once. He's been transcendent all season. If you pressure Trevor Lawrence, he goes from superhuman to pretty good. His pressure numbers
a little bit over 50% completion.
He's over 50%. His NFL passer rating drops from like 130 to 106. 106 NFL passer rating is great. If you had that in the NFL, you'd be fantastic. Joe's is like 148.
Yep.
Okay, so that's a big difference right there. So if you get some pressure on him, he becomes human. If you press Clemson's receivers, they become manageable. And I looked at the numbers this week, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but the teams that pressed Clemson most had the most success. So Ohio State pressed Clemson the whole game with Okudah and the kid on the other side, and Clemson's receivers struggled. And if you look at the 4 games that they were pressed most, their receiver rating, which gets the flip of quarterback rating, was all below 100, every single one of them. The games they were pressed least were the games that they had their best games in the 130s and 140s. So that doesn't account for ETN and the matchups that he can and the problems he can pose. But if you press their receivers, you can neutralize them. Teams have neutralized those guys. They looked very, very okay to below average against Ohio State because Okudah was on one side just jamming and on same kid on the other side doing the same thing. So if Stingley can do that on one side, Christian Fulton can do that on the other side, which that's what they've done all year. No one has pressed more. Literally, they have the 2 most press snaps in the country. If they can neutralize Clemson's receivers, that thins the margins, right? This game is going to be won on the margins probably. That thins the margins and makes it much harder on Clemson to get the 40 points that I think they're going to need to win this game.
Clemson will see more man coverage in this game than they've probably seen all year long because they haven't gone against a set of corners that can handle Higgins and Ross on the edge there. But LSU, the challenge is, okay, we have to sprinkle in some zone coverage. You can't play straight man the entire game. That's not fair to your cornerbacks. But LSU, when you look at the last, I believe it's 3 games as I looked it up, they've played quarters coverage like 6 times total.
Yeah.
Let's not forget, they were a big quarters team as they were trying to figure out how to play with this offense, right? How to be on the field more and how to work through some of the injuries that they had. So they've been way more aggressive here the last 3 or 4 games. I always say 3 games because I'm not giving Arkansas very much credit with the product they put out there on the field. But the last 3 games, I mean, they've been aggressive. Do you think that style stays the same? And I'm talking about coverages. I'm talking about blitzes. I'm talking about going after the quarterback like they have.
So the last 3 games are 3 of the most 5 blitzed games that Dave Aranda has called. They've blitzed like crazy. I think Georgia was the most they've blitzed. No, Texas A&M was the most they've blitzed all season. They just went after Kellen Mond. They pinned their ears back, went after him. The difference for LSU has been the emergence of Mo Hampton to be able to play that deep post safety. And he hasn't played a ton. He's playing like 11 snaps a game there, 12 snaps a game there. It seems like more than that because he's making an impact. He's not playing a ton there, but what he does is he stands back there and he's capable. He can come down and hit you like he did. Was that the Oklahoma game where he came down and hit and popped Jalen Hurts? He can play center field and cover sideline to sideline, but he frees up Grant Delpit and he frees up Jacoby
That's
Stevens.
the biggest thing.
And so the stat that I like with that is, this is kind of a convoluted stat, but let's just call it success rate. LSU's had a success rate of offenses have had a success rate of 38% against LSU all season. 38% of the time they have a positive play. It's called a positive play. When Mo Hampton's on the field, that drops to 26.5%. So when he's been out there, it makes the defense better, kind of like a domino effect. I don't know that Mo's a very good player, and he's got a very bright future in football and baseball, but it's not like he's out there making 10 tackles a game and getting 2 picks, but his presence has a domino effect to where you can get Grant closer, you can get Jacoby closer, you can just rush with 3 down linemen instead of 4. You can do some different things that you weren't able to do before, which Todd Harris was supposed to give you that. Todd Harris was supposed to be that guy in center field.
Big injury that people don't talk about.
And he got hurt, and that caused LSU's defense to shuffle and say, what's our identity? How are we going to fix this? Because he was a huge part of that identity. And Mo's emergence has allowed LSU to find that identity again.
When Mo Hampton's on the field, I think it's so important because now you have a trust in him, but what you're able to do, and you you allow Grant Delpit, like you mentioned, to be kind of last year's Grant Delpit as far as where exactly he can line up on the field, as my computer yells at me right there. And then you talk about Jacoby Stevens in this game is very intriguing to me because he can become a hybrid really quick.
Yeah.
And I mean that in a positive manner. And I kind of talk about him in the same light I do Thomas Davis. Thomas Davis played safety at Georgia. He's played 15 years, I think, at linebacker in the NFL. And Jacoby Stevens has that to him. And it's not a negative. I think it's a big positive because then you're creative with him. And, look, I know he got beat by CeeDee Lamb in quarters coverage. He was right there to make a play.
Good coverage. A good player made a good play.
He made a hell of a play.
Yeah.
I mean, CeeDee Lamb's one of the best in the country, and Jacoby Stevens was step for step with him.
Yeah.
He can do that. He can be the extra defender in the box against Travis Etienne. I mean, this is a guy that I feel like you have to utilize. But before Mo Hampton emerged, you couldn't do it.
No.
You couldn't do it.
You had to have one of those two guys in the post. The other thing that's happened is Kerry Vincent has played his tail off the last 4 weeks. If you go back to the Florida game, he hasn't allowed a touchdown from the slot since the Florida game. That's how good he's been in the nickel. Early in the season, Texas picked on him a lot.
Yeah.
Duvernay had a big game for Texas. He's taken the next step. He's making the plays. And what was crazy about Kerry early in the season, he was right there, kind of like you were just talking about with Jacoby. I can think of so many catches where Kerry was right there, just an inch away from getting his hand on the ball, but wasn't quite there. It feels like whatever that half second was that he wasn't getting there, he hadn't gotten faster, so I think he's probably processing things faster because he was already really, really fast. I think he's just processing things a half second faster, and if you look at his season numbers now, I think he's 7th among FBS nickels and passer rating against. He's got 4 interceptions now. He made that incredible interception last time out where he came from center field.
Yep.
You can move him around too. He can play deep center field. He can cover in the slot. So to me, that's where I'm very confident in LSU in this game is, yes, you got the number one quarterback for next year, the number one quarterback for this year. You've got a stud at running back on both sides. You've got 2 great corners and 2 great receivers on the outside for both teams. It's the nickels and the extra safety and the tight end. To me, that's where LSU has the advantage. And it's a coin flip and you win 50-50 with all those other matchups, I think LSU is going to win 80-20 on those interior matchups, the nickel, the tight end. So that's where I really like LSU, and I think that I'm really confident in this game.
Another guy, Cordell Flott, has played really well as of late as a true freshman. So LSU, man, getting these defensive backs, these young defensive backs to step up late in the season, that's not something you can always count on, but it has been pivotal for LSU's success because Jacoby Stevens, Grant Delpit, your 2 X factors are allowed to roam the football field way more because you have guys that you trust now you can put in those places to kind of cover up whatever they're doing. And I kind of talk about it real quick. Like Ryan Clark was the best at covering up for Troy Polamalu in Pittsburgh. When we played against them, like RC knew that Troy's probably going to do something crazy. He's going to do something maybe a little bit unorthodox.
Jump over the line of scrimmage.
Exactly. But RC knew, and he covered up for him, and that pair worked perfectly. And Mo Hampton's kind of been that. Cordell Flott's, starting to become that as well for this LSU